Don't forget to support our sponsor at M3 Virtual Accounting. Molly Morris will work with you on your budget, within your budget, to make sure that she can do what you need for whatever your virtual business might be. Whether that is an Airbnb, an OnlyFans, a podcast like what I do, or even a personal budget if you need help with your regular taxes every year. I have actually started using her for personal and professional. And she will meet with you for free to make sure that what she does will actually help you. So check her out at m3virtualaccounting.com to set up a totally free consultation and let her know that I sent you.
This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Some Spoiled, a Song of Ice and Fire to the co-host Switcheroo, the rereading Return to Westeros. HBO spoiler edition, meaning Rashawn has seen the show and she knows what happens, kind of, as far as her memory permits. In this episode, we are covering chapters 12 and 13 of A Dance with Dragons, Reek and Bran. In these chapters, shit is rough everywhere, kids. It's bad. Continues to be bad. We got some really mutilated people. One, it's done by other people, and the other, apparently a tree did it. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Monsters are dangerous, and just now kings are dying like flies.
I am the king!
Fuck the king.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn. That should be the next postcard. Just apparently a tree did it.
Apparently, a tree did it. I'm really starting to stack up some good quotes for the next postcards, and there was one that Miles and I were talking about Sookie Stackhouse, and the quote is just, "This is a world with vampires in it. Clearly, God has stopped caring." That was Miles, and I made him stop for a second while I wrote that down. All right. Time to talk about Reek. Time to do the thing neither of us wants to do.
Nobody wants to do this. Of all the things I did not want to do, this has got to be the did not want to do it-ist of them all. I didn't want this, and I knew it was coming. And then last week you even asked me, and I had seen that that this was the next chapter. I usually don't. I usually try not to see who the next chapter is going to be, but it turned out last week that I saw it was going to be him. So I even had time to prepare, and yet I was completely unprepared. I just, and to be
it's
fair,
hard to prepare for this,
and it's been this is the first Reek chapter we've gotten. We've gotten references to Reek, and then there was the whole the sort of switcheroo that Rams
that's ours.
Fucking that Bolton pulled. But we are in the last available book and just now getting Reek POVs, where it feels like we just got so much of Reek during the show. And I think you had said to me that was really a case of having an actor that you needed to keep to be part of the story because it's going to be important later on, but there's just these long stretches where there's nothing to do. So the show really, I don't want to say exaggerated, but they really put much more time into the storyline than is in the books.
Yes.
Right?
They needed to keep this actor busy.
Yeah, so I got, in the book at least, I got a real respite. We've had all these books and I haven't had to really deal with this particular character and this plot point. But eventually I ran out of time. Eventually, here we are. There was just no avoiding it, right? Here we are.
Yep.
And I didn't want to be here. Rick
Yeah.
doesn't want to be here either. None of us want to be here.
Oh, he sure doesn't.
And it
He
opens
sure
up with
doesn't.
he's eating a rat. Y'all, it's
And
still
loving it.
alive. It's a live rat.
Yep.
And I don't know
Apologies if you guys
why.
can hear this. My dog is chewing a chew that's like louder than he's ever done it in his tiny life. And of course it's while the recording is going. But yes, live rat.
And I don't know why, but that made this just so much worse. Like, he could have just snapped his little neck and then ate it, but he didn't. He just go eating it like an apple.
Yep, basically. And you're right about that. Like, he could have, and why doesn't he? Because it says by the third bite, the rat has ceased to struggle.
Like,
the third, but it's I think what we're meant to take from that is he's so too hungry to wait for it to die, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. He's too hungry to even care about killing it. He's starving, and he just goes, fucking just goes for it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, good sir, please, I beg of you. So yeah, that's what's happening. And I had a question as I was reading this, because there's no mention of Theon, like the name is never uttered, right? Nope. We have Reek / Theon remembering that he used to be someone else, but it's never really vocalized, right? Mm-hmm, it's never explicitly said. And but we know who he, and there's even a reference to like the Ironborn. And so it's very, very clear who this is, I think, right from the onset, right? When you're reading this for the first time, does everybody gets what's happening here? Like,
I honestly was trying to remember, and I don't recall. And I've had some people in the Discord who remember how things, it's actually really fun because like I'm not going to go back and re-listen to the original show. It's too painful to go back and like hear Brendan's voice and everything. So I have no interest in actually revisiting, but I am super curious a lot of the time what he said about certain chapters. Mm-hmm. And if anybody recalls whether he got who it was right away, if he says in the recording, I'd love to know. Because I can't remember for the life of me if it was something that took a minute to set it to kick in, that he like understood it eventually, or if he even says, right. But as for myself, I can't recall, and I feel like it took me a while to understand, but I genuinely don't remember. Right.
Because the way it's written and that it's not ever said right out that it's Theon, that's what made me think like, oh, was George doing a thing here where readers had to kind of like catch up to what was happening? Mm-hmm. And that kind of stuff is, I'm always going to miss that kind of stuff because of my exposure to the show. So, but yeah, folks who are listening, if you can recall when you read this for the first time, like, did you guys know right away who this was, or was there a moment where you're reading a chapter and then it dawns on you as you start putting the pieces together? Because there's a lot of missing pieces. If you haven't seen the show and you're just reading this, cold, I can't imagine what must be going on in your brain. Like, what the fuck is this?
I can't imagine what must be going on in George R.R. Martin's brain with the way this is written. And because like, so he's eating this rat. And he's like, it was so good that it brought tears to his eyes. This is how hungry this dude is being kept, right? And then he hears people in the hall and immediately stops eating. And like he doesn't even want to swallow and make the noise of that. And is mentally begging for these people to not be coming for him. Yeah. And he is aware that if it's found out he was eating this rat, he's gonna be in trouble for it. Which is just like the cruelty of that. It's not even enough that I starve you to the point that you're eating a rat and enjoying it, but that you're not allowed to eat the rats.
Mhm.
That's my
And
property. How dare
and
you?
yep, and that you know that there'll be punishment and consequences for daring to eat the rat.
Yep.
And then we find out that Lady Hornwood, who we know that Ramsay marries, he throws her in a tower and starves her to death. And it was so bad that she had started to eat her own fingers,
Yep.
which I don't even know how to wrap my brain around that. Right. Like, so yeah, the brutality of the Dreadfort of Ramsay Bolton himself and his father by extension, even though he's not really here right now. It is so grotesque that there's like, I can't even think of another word for it. It's like almost to not be believed. You know, like if someone is telling you that someone is behaving like this, you'd be like, oh, get the fuck out of here. Nobody acts like that for real. Like, you know, nobody's that evil. But here we are. Here we fucking are. And my heart broke into 1,000 pieces when we get a description of what Ramsay looks like. Because you guys may or may not know that I had such a crush on the actor that plays him, and I just thought he was so fucking cute. And to find out that this character is actually like almost hideous,
repulsive,
was just a real bummer. Also, maybe there's something to be said. Maybe like the really handsome villain has become a trope, but also like the you're so ugly on the outside, you match how you are on the inside. To me, is also kind of a trope, you know. And also,
it's really tricky. You know, the tropiness of each you can undermine in various ways by doing certain, but it doesn't seem like that's a priority here. Right.
Yeah. And so, I was just like, oh, why they got to do my boy like that? It also makes me I was going to say it makes me curious why he got cast, but it's TV and like the same thing with Brienne, who is not supposed to be conventionally attractive whatsoever. And then they cast like drop dead gorgeous fucking, what's her name? Gwendolyn Christie. Yeah. So, you know, TV is going to TV. What can you do?
That's the fucking truth.
So then also I love that these two kids that come to see him is, he thinks is Big and Little Walder. I say he thinks because I have no idea who is who and whether or not he can be trusted. He even says to himself at one moment that like he is not sure how much time has passed, and he thinks, what if these kids are actually the kids of the kids that I remember? And I was like, oh my God.
Can you imagine having like that little of a grasp of time that you're like, maybe the time went by enough for them to be married, impregnate a woman, her to bring the child to gestation, and then them to grow up. Like,
and I think what triggers that line of thinking is he's looking at his own hands, and they look, because he's been through, like, we find out that he has just been tortured, and it is like just beyond belief what he has been put through. But he's like looking at his hand, and it looks like an old hand to him. Like, it doesn't look like his, it's like an old man's hand, and he's just like, how much time have I been here for my hand to look like that? What if these kids are the kids of the kids that I knew? And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah. And this is something that, you know, so they come to the door of his cell, open it up. The torchlight is so bright that it's really painful for him. And he's like begging them to take the light away, which is like, I don't know. I don't remember whose chapter it was, but there was somebody who had been imprisoned, and the lack of light was what was so like horrifying for them. So now the fact that he is so accustomed that there being light is what's terrible. That just takes it to like this whole other level for me. It's so awful.
Yeah. Everything about this is terrible.
And then one of these kids starts laughing because he was eating a rat. He's been eating rats, said the second boy. Look, the first boy laughed. He has. That's funny.
Yeah, it's not.
What?
Kid, it's not funny. Are you familiar with what funny actually is? I feel like you haven't met funny yet. If you think this is funny.
I swear to God, And if this isn't how the world can be sometimes, people will react in a way that it would never have entered my mind to react in that fashion, because that is so unthinkable a reaction to me. And they'll just be like genuinely surprised that you don't find a thing funny or just have the same opinion as them about something.
Right.
And oh my God, like, what is wrong with you? It's the same sort of thing where I will hear somebody say something out loud and be like, I can't believe that you weren't too ashamed to voice that thought. That you really, like, you were not only comfortable enough with the fact that you believe this, but so confident that everyone else would agree with you. And meanwhile, I'm just like not even willing to say certain things, even though I should, because I'm too concerned and consumed with shame. I just can't understand. What kind of monsters does this dude surround himself with?
And the fact that these are supposed to be very young children and they're already this fucking broken and depraved, you know, and they're still kids themselves. Reek apologizes for eating a rat when they say that, and they say it's funny. And then he says, but they do it to me, which was just another level or another layer of how horrific all of this is. That, you know, when he lays down at night, the rats come out and like try to eat his fingers and his toes and bite on his, you know, his cheek and stuff, which is, you know, a real thing. It's just awful. And they ask him his name and he can't remember his name and he is terrified, you know. And I love this moment too when Reek does say something out loud, he hears his voice, and it was like the same thing when he looks at his hand. He's just like, I sound 100 years old. How long have I been here? Maybe it has been that long. Like his just complete disconnect from outside life has been so total. You know, it has been complete in such a way that he has no idea, you know, what year it is anymore.
Yeah. And when one of the boys says, your name is Reek, remember? He had forgotten because he doesn't need to have a name when he's alone in the dark. So even that isn't like completely at the top of his mind. He has to be reminded of it. And I mean,
he's got all these little rhyming schemes that he does, which I guess are like little tricks that he's come up with himself. I don't know if these are things that Ramsay says to him that he's repeating, or if these are like little devices he's come up with to try to help him remember his name. I don't know. But the whole, like, my name is Reek, it rhymes with leak, and then later it's like it rhymes with bleak, it rhymes with meek. And I'm curious what that will turn out to be, if that's like an invention of his own, or if that's just like a sort of game that Ramsay likes to play with him. And I can't remember if that comes up on the show or not.
You know, I was trying to remember that myself, because that is such a thing in the books, is him repeating these phrases. And I don't feel like the show really did it very much.
Yeah, I honestly cannot remember. Again, in news that surprises no one. But yeah, these kids are here to bring him up because his presence has been requested. And while these kids are telling him that, you know, he has to go with them, he has like a memory, a flashback of a time where he had tried to escape, and he says years ago it seemed, and I'm just like, years ago? Could it have been years ago? I have no idea. Right? It could have.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, we're talking about how he has like no good marker of how much time has passed, but that's sort of the experience reading the book, is like I'm always asking you, like, how long has it been now? How much time has passed? But basically, there was a girl named Kira, and she begged him to go, saying that she knows that there's going to be a gate that's not guarded, but she doesn't know the way. She can't go by herself. So, you know, she wants somebody to go with him. And he leaves with her. And it turns out that it was really just a big elaborate game to give Ramsay the opportunity to chase him down with his hunting dogs. And and that there's a moment where Reek tries to get her to split up and she refuses to separate. And he's just like, I fucking should have just left her. If we get separated, one of us might have gotten away. And then it just says the memory made it hard to breathe. And like, he can't even give us the whole story because it gets to a point where he can't even doesn't even want to revisit it.
Yeah, it's some acute PTSD that we are dealing with here. I hesitate to even call it post because he's in the middle of this.
It's like, yeah, right? Yeah, it's still occurring. Meanwhile, these kids are like, I don't know, should we wash him? And the other kid is like, no, Lord Ramsay prefers him in a state, which of course he would, right?
His lordship prefers him stinky. Like
that's
stinky.
It.
Even if he had wanted to resist, he did not have the strength. It had been scourged from him, starved from him, flayed from him. He went along as docile as a dog.
Yeah. There's that moment when they show up and he's thinking, there's like 2 little kids. I should be able to take little kids. But that's the thing, right? Like if these kids if you have somebody, a prisoner, and you can send children to go retrieve them, that means you are 100% confident that this person does not fucking pose any threat. Sorry about that. Somebody is very angry in the drive-thru.
Listen,
where them fries at?
To us all. As for me, I still have this dog that I'm dealing with being very, very chewy.
Mm-hmm.
He's so loud. Do you hear this? Oh my god! Can you? I
can't really hear it. Not really.
Okay, that's good because it sounds like it sounds like somebody chewing ice down like a paper towel tube to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like really, it just feels like it's echoing and loud. Anyway.
But yeah, that you can send 2 little kids to go retrieve him means you are not concerned about this person at all. They pose no threat. They're not exactly. They're not running. They're not trying to fight. They're not going to try to overtake them. Like he sends these kids down to collect Reek, like you would send them to go get something off of the dresser and bring it back to you in the living room.
Yep. Yep.
And that says like so much about what's been done to him and where he is now, where Reek is as I wouldn't say where he is as a person, but it's almost like he's not even a person anymore.
Very much like,
this is something, he's been turned into something else. I don't know what, but it's just barely human at this point. And it is awful.
Yeah, and this to the point where even he thinks about how if I were a dog with a tail, my the bastard would have cut it off, and immediately is like, oh god, I can't, not a bastard. And it's like he was just thinking it, and he immediately kind of panics at the fact that the thought even crossed his mind. Like Ramsay can read his mind. Yeah,
and I love the way that progresses too, because the first thought when he's thinking of himself as a dog, he says, if I had a tail, it would have been tucked between my legs. And then the brain goes, if you had a tail, he'd have cut it off by now. And it's like going from 0 to 100, like Jesus fucking Christ. He can't even, like, in his imagination, he can't even have a tail because that would have been taken from him. And also, to your point, in his imagination, he can't even call Ramsay a bastard because it's so dangerous. And we find out they calling him Snow to his face, which I don't know who the fuck is out here calling Ramsay Bolton Ramsay Snow to his fucking face. Right? Like, why would you do that? But apparently someone did. But someone did, because we find out that like doing that sends him into what he calls a black rage. Yeah. So they take him up to this great hall, which also, how do you take someone who's starving to death, who is eating rats, and walk them through the dining hall at dinner time, where there's just
one of the guys asks that, it's just like, yo, we're eating, what the fuck?
Right? Like he asked on behalf of them. I'm asking on behalf of like, how do you like walking Reek through this room filled with food after he's been starving to death. Like, that is so fucking cruel.
Yep.
And I think he said something like the smell of it was like his stomach starts to rumble and his mouth starts to water just from being around the smells of like the wine and the food being roasted and all that. It is just cruel for cruelty's sake. And then, the guy that you're talking about is just like, dude, I'm right in front of my salad. I'm trying to have dinner. Like, what are you doing? Why would you bring this thing in front of my food?
So let's see. Some wrinkled their noses as he passed, whilst others laughed at the sight of him, which genuinely, again, I would like to know what kind of fucked up monster you have to be to see a person in this state missing all kinds of parts and then be like, that is hilarious. Oh my God. Did you see him? Oh, wow, that was so gross.
Right. The people that he's around, and we meet we don't meet them, but Reek gives us some of their names. Some of Ramsey's favorites, Ben Bones and Damon Dance for Me, and somebody named Sour Allen. I sure don't. I was so glad we didn't get a fucking reason. We skated right past it, and I was grateful. Thank you very much for sparing me those details. Skinner, somebody named Yellow Dick. This made me laugh because I'm a 12-year-old boy.
Oh no, I missed that somehow on my first read.
And then so Ramsey's got these two lords that are like dining up on like the sort of dais where Ramsey is, and that's where they sort of drop Reek off. Sort of
it rhymes with leak. Not with leaf.
And who are these guys that are with him? Did we find out who they are? Did I get names?
I'm trying to find the spot where, let's see, at the high table sat the bastard of Bolton sat in his lord father's seat, drinking from his father's cup. Knew at a glance that they were both lords. One was gaunt with flinty eyes, a long white beard, and a face as hard as a winter frost. One of his shoulders was much higher than the other, and he stooped over his trencher like a vulture over carrion. And
are we supposed to know who these guys are? Am I supposed to know who they are?
I don't remember if we are meant to. Let's see. The Ironman will tell you what is dead may never die, but rises again like Reek. He smells of the grave. He smells of night soil and stale vomit. Is there some reason you need to inflict him upon us while we're eating? And he has to be like, look again and see who he is. And they're
I love this.
Oh my God. It takes a minute.
He tells everybody that that Reek has been with me since I was a boy. My Lord Father gave him to me as a token of his love. And I was just like, wait, what? What? That's what? I got so confused, and I'm still a little confused by that story because I don't know. Like, I don't think Ramsey literally means like when I was a boy. I think it's much more of a like before I was raised up and became, like legitimate, before I became a lord and all that stuff, before I was married,
Yeah.
But yeah, then he asked these guys to like look closer, and the crooked guy is just like, hold up, is that Stark's ward? And then he says smiling, always smiling. And I was just like, oh, that's right. He was, wasn't he?
I'm trying to find, let's see. Oh, here it is. Austin's Info Corner. The two old men with Ramsey at the table are not named, but are Arnulf Karstark and Hother Umber.
Oh, an Umber and a Karstark.
Note that the Karstarks have sent letters of support to Stannis. So are they playing both sides against the middle, or?
Interesting.
Question mark.
Interesting.
And there's a summary of Theon's injuries. He has been emasculated. He's had several teeth removed, 3 fingers and 3 toes flayed and then cut off.
Emasculated is I
Mhm.
mean, it's not funny. I just it's
But
such a like
the
clinical way to say, you know.
yes.
It really like tries to take some of the teeth out of the horror of that. But yeah,
You didn't need
yeah.
to say that way either.
I'm having a real bad day with phrases, y'all. It's been real
Yeah.
bad.
Guys, before we started
Um
recording, there were a few that I had to be like, Deshaun, stop it. Don't say it that way. Phrasing.
um oh yeah. So then Ramsey finds out about the rat that Reek ate a rat, and Ramsey is just like, what does he say? All of the rats belong to my lord father. How dare you make a meal out of one without my leave? And Reek, it says, did not know what to say, so he said nothing, which I was like, that is the right answer. Don't say a thing, just stand
Has
there.
learned.
And then he says, you know, sometimes Ramsey would make a joke about balancing him out because of the where he's lost fingers and where he's lost toes on one foot versus the other. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just like this chapter is just filled with so much terribleness
Yep.
that I needed like a minute. I needed like a break. And when I turned the page and saw that we were at the end of this chapter, I was like, oh my God, thank God. Because I don't think I could have taken another 2 pages. Even though
Sorry.
nothing happened in this chapter as far as like terrible things happening to Reek. We were just getting caught up to speed, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was just getting a primer in what he's been going through, and that was already too much. I cannot
Yeah.
even begin to imagine what it will be like if we have a POV as he's being tortured. You know, I do not want that for myself. So I'm hopeful that all the POVs are just like after something has happened and maybe we're just alone in his head while he's in his dungeon or whatever, and not anything in any active torture moments. Ugh.
This is something that I have mentioned before, is that George R. R. Martin doesn't show torture, doesn't show rape. It is all over the place. The threat is everywhere. The after effects are everywhere. It's talked about freely, but he doesn't actually write the scenes themselves.
Thank
And
God for
that somehow makes them more terrible.
Oh no.
Do you know what I mean though? Like there is something about the, like, it's like having a monster in a movie that you never see.
Yeah.
You create something in your mind
It's way
that
worse.
is, yeah, you know, like, and he tells you things that have been done to just feed into that, like, instinct that we have to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
But in not writing about it, I think he really manages to do something that works exceptionally well, especially regarding rape, because men writing rape scenes is a highly questionable endeavor most of the time. And
True
so
that.
him managing to like have them, the sexual assault all over the story, but not treat it like it's something that we need to be there for, is really smart, in my opinion, and is a relief. I mean,
one of the things that is so upsetting about Ramsey, at least from this first chapter, is that once you find out the things that he has done, I have a real sense of being like, I don't know what this dude is like. He's capable of anything. Like, and you know, like I can't picture what line he won't cross. It's clear that there are no lines, and that makes him really like monstrous. That makes him, you know, almost too big for the page. Like, this guy could literally do anything. You have no idea, like the levels that he would sink to, and the sadist that he is. So this sort of like every time that Reek is just like, got to do anything to keep him from getting angry at me. I have to say whatever and do whatever and behave however, because God only knows if I give him an excuse, you know, to do anything to me, how bad it would be. And it just is so like jumps off, like I said, jumps off the page. Like, it just looms over everything. And it turns out that the big news that Ramsay wants to share is that he is engaged.
Yeah.
And my Lord Father is bringing me a Stark girl, Arya. And Theon, I'm going to call him Theon in this moment because he thinks to himself, Arya Underfoot, and then Arya Horseface. And then it's like, Sansa was the pretty one.
Sansa's so beautiful, she'll break right through that torture wall into his head. I guess.
But and he remembers a time when Theon had thought that maybe Ned would marry him to Sansa and then claim him as a son, but that had only been a child's fancy. Which was something that I don't either remember or something that did not come up in Theon's POVs, is that as a kid he had this sort of fantasy of like marrying Sansa and becoming, a real son to Ned Stark and becoming like a real part of this family and all that.
Yeah, I don't think that's in the show at all.
Yeah, so that was a kind of sweet, but also just makes all of this like even more terrible.
Yeah.
And then Ramsay's kind of bragging like she's going to be the Lady of Winterfell and I'll be her lord. And Reek is just like, congratulations. And then he says, will you attend me at my wedding?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know. Like, he says that they're going to take him out of the dungeon and they're going to bathe him and feed him, and then says that there's a little task for you and you'll need your strength back if you're to serve me. And y'all, I don't know what this could possibly be. It is Reek, but the thought of having to do something, a shiver went through him because he knows it's going to be awful, whatever it is that he's about to fucking ask of him.
Yeah.
And Ramsay says, I ride to war, and you will be coming with me to help me fetch home my virgin bride. And I don't know, y'all, what this is. I remember enough that the girl that's coming obviously is not Arya, and that there's a plan afoot in King's Landing is where this plan is. Whose plan is this? Remind me.
I'm trying to remember exactly who started the whole thing. I feel like it was Tywin, because I think that Jaime sees the girl when she's leaving, and he himself, like, I think that Tywin's still alive and Tyrion is still there and everything at that point.
Okay.
So I think this is Tywin's plan. I
remember Jaime seeing the girl as this was all like coming together and she was about to leave, but I couldn't remember like who was the mastermind behind it. And I remember though that it was very different from the show and having Peter be sort of like, the mastermind behind that part of the plan. But this whole I ride to war and you'll be coming with me to fetch my virgin bride, I don't know why. I just figured she was on her way to him. We see her, so I don't know what he means, where he's going, or maybe she left King's Landing and she's waiting for him somewhere else in the north, and then they're going to ride to Winterfell together, or maybe she's already at Winterfell and he's going to meet her there. I'm not really sure. I don't know. But if that's what it is, if they're about to set up shop at Winterfell, which, if I'm not mistaken, is what the show did with Sansa, is had them at Winterfell together. Or maybe they were at the Dreadfort together. I don't remember.
No, I think they were at Winterfell.
Right. But so I figured that's probably what that is. And maybe he's just being a fucking drama queen with this whole I ride to war, and I don't need to be taking it as literal as I'm taking it.
Yeah, he definitely feels like a drama queen. That's not really the wording that I would use, but ultimately it's the same meaning of just like, yeah, this guy just goes too far with everything. He's too much, but not in a charming way. Yeah, so that's the end of that chapter. And, oh, God, you guys. It's just really remarkable, the difference in attitude that I have this time around versus the first time, because I was really excited for Brendan to reach the Reek chapters because the show hadn't happened, and he was sure that he was dead, that Theon was dead. And I was like, there was in the original read through, Brendan was like unflappable sometimes. There were things that he just didn't have as much of a reaction to as I was hoping, because he had gotten the measure of what kind of writer George R.R. Martin was from the zeitgeist. So the fact that, the Red Wedding, for example, he was just like, well, what else were they going to do? Like it didn't have the like flipped out reaction. And this was something that I was like, I don't think he sees this coming at all. So I remember changing the banner image on the Facebook page for the show to just the view of a dungeon, like from inside one of the cells, and just like the wet, grimy interior. And I put the words over it, reek, reek, it rhymes with weak. And I put that as our banner image before we even got to this chapter, because I knew he wouldn't know the meaning of it at all. Like it wasn't going to, And so, yeah, I was like hype. And it's just so different this time because this is coming. So it doesn't have that kind of gut punch. And yet it's done so differently in the book than it is in the show. There's still an element of like, oh, she really doesn't know what's coming, but not in a good way. Like, I'm not trying to say every Reek chapter is ghastly, but they get worse than this for sure.
I'm not looking forward to any of that.
Yeah. So I'm just in like this place where, and they're important. There are chapters that have a lot of information. There's a lot that's like you need to know. And it's really well done. But yeah, shit's rough these days. This is it's gonna be a challenge here and there. And we'll see how it goes.
Well, this is all deeply, deeply, deeply unsatisfactory.
I'm sorry for it. Anyway, okay, so let's get to the Bran chapter. This is no good either. First of all, Jojen's dying. He's in a really, really bad state.
Yeah. And I feel like it's getting downplayed, but we all know this is real bad. This is really bad. He's been doing poorly for a while, and there is not even a smidgen of indication that he is on the upswing, that he is improving in any manner whatsoever. And we just keep getting lines like, he can barely walk. He's leaning on Mira. She has to shoulder him up. He can climb no more than he could walk. Just this little indications that he is not doing well. And they are literally out in the middle of nowhere. And there is it feels at least like there is no aid coming to them from any direction. Like the opposite is true. The only thing that's coming for them is bad news. That's all that exists out here is bad news.
Yep. I would agree with that.
And, they're out in the snow and the cold. Their food situation is also bleak. Yep. And then we have Cole Hands through the first several pages just being like, this is bad. I can tell they're nearby. This is bad. This is terrible. They're close, but they can't fucking see anything, and nothing seems like it's anywhere around them. But they're here. They're here. We got to hurry up. It's getting dark. Got to hurry up. And like, you're reading it. You're just like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? And then when it happens, you're like, oh my God, what the fuck?
Indeed. This is a scene in the show that like was one of the ones that got me the most angry because,
really?
in the show, I don't know if you remember,
I most
but
certainly do not.
have a whole shootout with like a crew of children of the forest and a bunch of skeleton war whites.
Oh my God.
And it's like,
that's
and they're
right.
throwing like weird
like
leaf
fireballs or
bombs.
something.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that. That's
It's
this
just
moment.
so like cinematic and over the top. And yeah, that's this point.
I never in a million years would have thought that was supposed to be the same exact moment here. Holy shit. That's such a different tone.
Yep.
None of that. Like, this is them like barely getting away with their lives. Just barely. And it wasn't like no big fucking firefight. Ugh.
And that's the difference. The show really wanted to make things like action, you know, and that's just not really what the story is. And anytime that they did that, it was like, it always felt strange because the tone is not exciting adventure. It's dread. The whole thing is dread from beginning to end. And so making it sort of like this, oh, they're coming after us, but don't worry, we have children of the forest who are hiding with bombs. Like, what are you, what? You know? And like, there's a child of the forest here, but it seems like one of the only ones left. Like, there's not a group of them. And it's just the feeling of them barely getting through alive is so much more acute because they didn't have lots of help. They got lucky in the way that they got through. And it was, you know, it just, I will never forget yelling at the screen during this scene and just being so disgusted with just the whole vibe of it. I was like, what is this? It was insulting. I was insulted.
I mean, it's so different. Like this, like them, he has to warg into Hodor to get them even having an opportunity to escape this moment, you know? And the child of the forest doesn't really even reveal herself until they make it to the cave, right?
Exactly.
There's no, she doesn't have anything to do with them getting away. They get, like you said, lucky. They get fucking lucky. They barely make it. And yeah, like they've got no food. Cold Hands can't go with them because it turns out the cave where they're heading is warded, so he can't even like go with them there. And
there was something about that. I was like, that's really unfair,
right? And they have
done all this good shit, and he's still being treated like a stepchild in the corner.
Yep, not allowed to pass. And it sucks too because it's like no matter, like his fate is sealed, and it doesn't matter how much good he does, it's not going to change anything. He's still of whatever this air quotes evil is. Like he's tainted now. He's part of this thing, and it really kind of sucks for him because he's still out here like low key saving people's lives, like Sam and Gilly, and now Bran and these guys, and it's not going to matter.
Yep.
He's still kind of doomed to this.
It's a real thankless job.
Life. Yeah, it really is. Like he could just be like, well, fuck this then. I'm just going to throw in being a white, you know, and call it a day. Just throw in being a white.
A lot of us know that feeling. Am I right?
Oh, God. My apologies.
The Day I Decided I Was White by Natasha Kingston.
Oh shit. But yeah, you get my point though, right? Like he could just be like, all right, that's it. I'm just going to embrace evil now. I'm evil. Can't help it. You know, I don't make the rules. I'm evil now. But no, he's still out here, you know, being honorable. Is honorable the right word I want? I guess it'll do in a pinch. You know,
I feel like that works. Noble.
Yeah, noble is even better. That's the word I wanted. Noble. And he takes them all this way knowing, even though they didn't know, but he knew, Cold Hands knew he couldn't go the whole journey with them. Like he was always aware of that. And yet he does all this anyway. And I wouldn't mind a Cold Hands POV. That's all I'm saying. You know?
Yeah, same.
I wouldn't mind one. So and to get to this cave, which is their end goal, they have to climb. And Mira is like, "Oh, this is a non-starter. So y'all can just go ahead and go, because we're not making this." And Bran has to just be like, "No, you can't. You gotta come with us. You can't just stay down here and die." Which isn't really helpful, right? Just telling somebody that they can't stay here and die doesn't make having to get up and try to get to a place any easier.
Yeah.
But to her credit, she fucking throws her brother halfway around her shoulders and starts trying to like do it, dragging her brother. While Hodor has Hodor has Brandon in the little basket. You know what I thought about too when I was reading this chapter? Remember how everybody joked about Rickon being like off the show for like 3 seasons or whatever? I can see now exactly why that is what it is. Because that motherfucker is just, he doesn't exist anymore, does he? He just
he's gone.
What happened? Did George Martin, like, what happened?
There's a mention of the Shaggy Dog, his wolf, in one of the Warg POVs. I think it's one of Bran's. So like he's out there, but we are not acquainted with what's happening.
I feel like we're barely acquainted with Rickon anymore. Like, I don't even know that dude anymore. Like,
yeah, it was the whole thing with Rickon, like as in the book fandom, because like mild spoilers, we don't find out in this book what's going on with him. It's not like we have a surprise Rickon POV eventually that I have to keep. That is not a thing. There are so many things that will happen that somebody's like, well, who did it? And people just be like, oh, it was Rickon. Like anytime that you can't come up with like why a thing happened or who could have known this or where they got the information. And it's just, well, probably Rickon did it. Probably, you know, like
that is out fucking standing. I love that so much. Oh God. So yeah, they're trying to make their way up, and they are getting like closer and closer, and then Bran notices that there is a fire in this little cave. And just when he's about to like bring that to the attention of everybody, then everything goes fucking bonkers. All of a sudden the world just goes upside down, because these fucking things are under the snow. These whites are under the snow, and they're just like reaching out and grabbing them by the ankles and the legs and pulling them down. And Hodor goes down. Bran fucking in that little basket goes spinning wildly over it. And I was just like, this is terrible for everybody involved. Like, what are we going to do?
And isn't this like, they don't need Children of the Forest with bombs. This is very scary. We don't need that.
This is fucking harrowing. They are. There's so many of them that Bran loses count of just how many they are. Hodor is flipping out. Cold Hands is trying to fight them, but you know, these things are like already dead, so you can't just fucking kill them. You know, it's you gotta do a little bit more than that. And then something grabs fucking Bran, and I'm just like, oh my God, what's Bran gonna do? This is all like awful. I was reading this shit so fast.
Oh God. That was when his shout became a scream.
Yeah,
Bran filled the fist with snow and threw it, but the white did not so much as blink.
It's a black fistful of snow. I'm sorry,
he's just like pocket sand. A black hand fumbled at his face, another at his belly. The fingers felt like iron. He's going to pull my guts out. But suddenly summer was between them. And I really enjoy much more at this point that his wolf's name is Summer, because these are creatures of winter and ice and cold. And he has a wolf that's literally like, I represent everything that will hurt you.
Yeah, agreed.
And yeah, he manages to pull it apart. The severed hand was still moving. Bran rolled away from it. He glimpsed the trees above, the orange glow between. 50 yards. If he could drag himself 50 yards, they could not get him. A little farther, just a little farther. Then you can rest beside the fire.
Listen, this was like imagining this child who cannot use his legs, who has been thrown to the ground. When these things have him and he thinks he's going to pull my guts out, I was like, yes, that is exactly what he's going to fucking do if you don't figure out how to get away. And it's funny because I should have been thinking immediately about Summer, right? But I wasn't. Like, I was just really caught up in the moment, so that when Summer does come in, I was like, oh God, that's right, thank God. And I didn't even feel like, oh, what a fucking cheat, you know? I legit was like, oh my God, thank God, thank fucking God. Yeah, and then him like dragging himself, trying to get closer and closer and counting down the yards. Like, this really worked for me. You know, it's just so wild that this is the same moment from with like watching the show. I'm not going to front like I wasn't entertained, but I didn't have anything to like compare it to. So you're watching the movie, and you know, and it's like, you know, we've been following Bran for all those seasons at that point, and then we finally get to meet one of the children of the forest, and then they turn out to be like badasses with fire bombs. So you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm with it, you know. But I never in a million years would have, as I was reading this, my mind did not go to that scene at all. And I was trying to think, like, what scene was this? And because I was like, is this the hold the door scene? And I was like, wait, no, that's later. That's not this. So I was actively trying to think where on the show was this moment. And I never, ever made that connection. That's just how different they are in tone. I never even put it together.
I really kind of want to go watch it now just to get angry again. So let's see. Hodor starts screaming, and Bran goes into Hodor. He rips his longsword from his belt. Deep inside, he could hear poor Hodor whimpering still, but outside he was 7 feet of fury with old iron in his hand. He raised the sword and brought it down upon the dead man, grunting as the blade sheared through wet wool and rusted mail and rotted leather, biting deep into the bones and flesh beneath. Hodor, he bellowed, and slashed again. This time he took the Wight's head off at the neck, and for a moment he exulted until a pair of dead hands came groping blindly for his throat. Bran backed away, bleeding, and Mira was there, driving her frog spear deep into the Wight's back. Jojen was twisting feebly where she'd lain him down. Mira led the way back up the hill, jabbing at the Wights when they came near. The things could not be hurt, but they were slow and clumsy. Hodor, Hodor said with every step. Hodor, Hodor. He wondered what Mira would think if he should suddenly tell her that he loved her. What a moment.
Yeah.
Weird. It's a real, like, I think I might be about to die and I've got to say it before it's too late kind of thing, I guess, you know? But it does feel so strange in that moment with somebody as young as Bran, you know?
Yeah. I love too that, like, that it's just a thought and then it's gone, but it feels very real, you know? Also, like, you know, everything that they've been through together, the fact that she just showed up and fucking had his back and saved his life, low-key, and just the real moment of just being like, looking at her, like, still panting from what you just went through and just being like, you know what, I fucking love you.
Right? Yep. And then he's like looking up, like, Summer is getting so close to these Wights and they're on fire, and Bran is like, why is he getting so close? What is he doing? And then he sees his own body face down in the snow, just like sprawled out, and is like, oh God, Summer's trying to like protect him. And he's thinking, what happens if I die while I'm in Hodor's body? Like, do I get stuck here? Do I go into Summer? Do I just die? Like, and I do appreciate, even in the midst of this, him wondering about that, because that's a real question.
Yeah. It took me a second to like put together what was happening as I was reading, because it was just so weird. Like, and trying to remember because it's still like Bran this and Bran realized that and Bran thought that, but you forget that he's in Hodor's body at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So in my brain I'm picturing really the kid from the show. Every time his name comes up, I see that kid.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm reading this bit and I'm seeing in my head Bran, and I'm seeing Bran be like confused about what's going on. And I had to like go back. I'm like, oh wait, that's right. He's looking at himself fucking face down in the snow, almost completely vulnerable. Just Summer is between him and these whites. And thankfully they are on fire.
Yes. Some progress there. That's nice to see.
And that's what the child of the forest does, is sets them on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that it doesn't really say if she's like using these leaf bombs or whatever to light them up. So maybe no,
it just says he saw a little girl with a torch darting this way and that.
Yeah.
So I think that's all. And
I love too that there's this moment of like all these ravens coming out of the cave, because that's just really like, anytime that that happens, you're just like, ooh, that is very ominous. And then he sees. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say he sees for a second what he thinks is Arya, and he's like, that cannot be right. I know that's not her. She's like 1,000 miles away, or she's dead by now. But yet there she is. There she is, whirling a scrawny, ragged, wild thing, and tears start to fill his eyes. Well, tears filled Hodor's eyes, which again is like so tricky when you're reading. But and obviously, like, I know it's not Arya, but the scene is so chaotic. They are literally fighting for their lives. The odds are not in their favor. You should be listening to Hunger Games with us, by the way, y'all. And for him to see this, and for his brain to play that kind of trick on him, that he sees his sister, and to have that moment where he knows it's not his sister, and yet that's his sister right in front of him. I loved it. I really did. I loved it.
Yes. This is, I completely agree with you. This is actually the mixture of like frantic motion and movement and weird mental departures. I have always really liked that when that's done well. Like there's a moment in one of the Sookie novels where she's in the midst of this terrible hostage situation and gets very distracted by the fact that she needs a pedicure really bad. Like she's sitting there just staring at her toes, and it's just like, God, that paint, I need to get that off. It's really hard to get toenail polish off sometimes. And like, it has nothing to do with anything. The scene is very tense. There's shit happening, but that's how our brains go. Sometimes
our brains, we check out. We also come up with like alternate realities when the reality is too uncomfortable or too upsetting. And it's not an extreme example as far as being like violent or life threatening, but one of my best examples, and I know I've told the story on like some Unsober podcast. I don't know if I've ever said it in like a regular podcast, but the story of my cousin completely ripping us off to support her habit that I tell when she came and got my keys for me in high school, you guys. So my cousin came and got my keys for me. She had spent the weekend with us, and she was like, I need the keys to get my purse. And so she came to my high school. So they called me to the principal's office, and she was like there. So I gave her my keys. And then I got home at the end of the day, and she had completely robbed us blind. She was like the fucking Grinch. Like, she even stole the ice cube and the ice cube tray. Like, it was on that level, right? Jesus. Like she used our own, like, because you live in the city, you have those shopping carts for going like to the supermarket and the laundry and whatever. She used that because, like, how else was she going to carry all my shit out my house? I walked around my little 2-bedroom apartment. It was not a big apartment. It was just me and my mom. I walked around that apartment looking for stuff for like 45 minutes, to the point that at one point, you guys, I swear to God, I went into the bathroom and pulled the shower curtain back in case all of our missing shit was just in the tub. Like, what the fuck? But my brain was like, well, maybe she didn't steal everything because you haven't checked the shower yet.
Oh my god. This is one of those moments like that cartoon I sent you where like, to tell a funny story, I have to share family trauma first.
Well, just a little trauma between friends.
For a soupçon trauma. For the flavor.
But yeah, like my brain really thought that was like a reasonable thing to do. It was like, well, don't panic yet, Rashawn. Check the bathtub. Like it was a reasonable fucking thing. Like, was I high? Yeah. So yeah, our brains will try to make things be things in those extreme moments. And I just love the recognition that he knows that's not his sister, and yet the acknowledgement that when I look at this, I am still seeing my sister here, even though I know that can't be real. It can't be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also like the tying what Arya is like to the children of the forest, which I'm not trying to say like she's a descendant of the children of the forest exactly, but I'm not saying she's not. Maybe there's some of that blood in there. I don't know.
The description, there she was, whirling, a scrawny thing, ragged, wild, her hair a tangle. Like, that sounds like Arya to me.
Everything turned inside out and upside down, and Bran found himself back inside his own skin, half buried in the snow. The burning white loomed over him, etched tall against the trees in their snowy shrouds. It was one of the naked ones Bran saw in the instant before the nearest tree shook off the snow that covered it and dropped it all down upon his head. The next he knew, he was lying on a bed of pine needles beneath a dark stone roof. And, yeah, he is like, the snow buried me. And she's like, yeah, I hid you and have pulled you out of there. Oh boy.
Yeah. That
close
is
thing, kiddo.
Yeah, that was like, I'm assuming the snow wasn't just luck.
No, I don't think so. I think she did it.
Did Mira do it, or did the this is so weird to say the child of the forest, but I can't call her the children of the forest. That's not right.
I mean, yeah. I think it was the child of the forest, but I'm not totally sure. It just doesn't seem like it was luck, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't. I feel like it wasn't either, but they don't really say, so I don't know. Maybe it was just the universe saving Bran because he is, so important to the story. Which is funny. I know we all like joked about it because watching this, and I don't know, maybe it'll make more sense in this chapter. And I've had other people, I think even Austin said to me in a comment in the group that even though the show, it sort of felt like it came out of nowhere on this show, that really Bran is who this story is leading up to, right? That's who Martin really does have in mind. Like if these books were to be finished, that's where he is leading. For me on the show, it felt like it didn't connect, and I just didn't think it didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, oh, this is super disappointing. I don't like any of this. Maybe, and because he hasn't finished the books, maybe the parts of the story that would really make that make sense aren't written yet. But the fact that Austin shared that a lot of people really already feel that way, the best I can do is imagine that there's going to be some shit that happens in this book that reminds me or leads me to believe that Bran is much, much more important than the show ever adequately expressed. So if I keep that in mind, then the idea that let me see how I want to say this, that the environment itself would protect Bran. I like the idea of the snow just being like, oh shit, we got to do something. All right, no. You know what I mean?
Form up. We've got a VIP over here. Did you see his bracelet?
Right, and I know it doesn't make any sense, but that's kind of how I read it. It was like, oh shit, they knew the Bran was important, so they just got together and made that shit happen.
That is so funny. So this is when she introduces herself. The first men named us children. The giants called us Wodaknagran, the squirrel people, because we were small and quick and fond of trees. But we're not squirrels. We're not children. And when Mira's like, well, you speak our language? And she says, well, for him, I was born in the time of the dragon, and for 200 years I walked the world of men to watch and listen and learn. I might be walking still, but my legs were sore and my heart was weary, so I turned my feet for home.
Yeah.
And Mira says 200 years, and she just says, yeah, y'all are the children.
I love that so much. That's such a great moment. And yeah, this thing, this is like, I feel like this might be one of the first, maybe not the first time, but this is really like, oh, Bran's important. Bran's really, really important. She was out here for 200 years waiting just for him. And it started to like give up hope and felt like it's been too long and I'm just going to go home now. And like they had lost hope that he was ever going to show. Like there was a Bran prophecy that I don't know about yet. And then they ask her, does she have a name? And she says, when I need one.
I love that. I really enjoy that. Yeah, I do. Anyway.
Right? It keeps right on moving, does not offer it up at all.
Nope.
I really, really enjoyed that moment.
There's a real, I don't think you need to know.
Right, right.
None of your business.
Exactly. What business is it of yours? But and so she starts to take them down, and this is when they have to sort of say goodbye, because Cold Hands can't come. We knew this already. He tried to tell them, but Bran is still like, no. What about the Ranger? And Bran thinks, well, if we leave him, they're going to kill him. And she's just like, no, they killed him a long time ago. Come on now. We got to go. And they're going to meet the Three-Eyed Crow. This is it. They have gotten to where they have been traveling so long and so far to get to.
Yeah.
And they go down, and it's very tricky. He's banging his head on the fucking ceiling of the cave. At one point they gotta like get down on their asses and scooch down.
So uncomfortable
and very undignified.
Oh my god. You owe me a Coke.
Oh shit.
The way the shadows shifted made it seem as if the walls were moving too. Bran saw great white snakes slithering in and out of the earth around him. And he's just like, what the fuck? And it takes a minute, and he finally realizes, oh, they're the roots of a weirwood tree.
Yeah, yeah. This creepy, is all though. Like so fucking creepy. And he's watching everything, and he is like, I am right smack dap in the middle of an old Nan tale. Like, like I am in it for real now. And we know that she's told him all of these stories, and a lot of them are like dark and scary. And so I was ready for it to like be a thing. I thought we were about to really get into it. And the sense of like foreboding I felt, I was like, I don't want to do this right now.
Right. Yes.
Agree. But then, then he realizes very quickly after that where he is, and thinks to himself, there must be a whole grove of weirwood trees above them for it to be this many roots. And he's never seen this many of them, or roots as thick as they are here. And he's just like, Jesus Christ. And then realizes that what they're walking over that's quite crunchy are bones.
Yeah.
And at first it's all good because it's just bones of birds and a couple of small critters. And then it's not.
And then it ain't.
Then there's big ones that might be from giants and small ones that could be from children. And on either side of them, there are these like, I don't know, like these cutouts in the wall of the cave and there are skulls in there.
Yeah, niches. Is that the word you're hesitating over?
Is that what he called them? I'm trying to find the sentence.
It sounded like you were making an N noise, so that's why I jumped to that. But I'm not looking at the text.
On either side of them, in niches carved from the stone, skulls look down on them. A bear skull, a wolf skull, half a dozen human skulls. I didn't love that. I'm gonna be very honest with y'all. I was not a huge fan of that. And I was trying to picture what he's describing, and I have to say I didn't do a great job of getting a visual, because I was picturing people that were sort of almost encased, like they had been trapped, which is much more scary than I think what this is supposed to be. So I think I pictured it wrong. Like I just
niche is like if you're in a church and they have like the little statues of saints lining a hallway, they're in like alcoves along the way.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
So they're almost like decorative skulls.
A little bit, yeah. It feels like this is honoring them somehow.
Okay. Because what I was picturing was very, very scary. Almost like maybe we should stop following her.
Gotcha.
Even though I know that we have to, like, obviously, like, she's not going to put their head in the wall. But what I was picturing was very, very, very upsetting.
Oof, yeah, no, not like that.
Yeah, I might try to find this episode, and I don't know if I can like revisit episodes if that's like not fair for the recording, but I want to see what this looks like. You know,
I'm sort of curious myself because I remember once we actually meet the
that I remember
Crow. He looks a lot different in the show than he's described as looking here.
Yeah, I agree. I remember him, and this description is actually like what they did on the show was like, oof, yikes.
Yeah.
But this is a different type of yikes. This is yikes on bikes. This is like not your everyday yikes. This is holiday yikes.
Did you say holiday yikes?
Holiday. Yeah, not your everyday yikes. This is holiday yikes.
Oh my God. This is company yikes. This is the one we keep in a china cabinet and we just trot out every holiday. Yeah, I get it.
The kind of yikes you can't try your hands on.
Yeah, these are the good yikes. You don't use the good yikes. Not yet. No. Not for these guys. These are family. What do we care? So before them, a pale lord in ebon finery sat dreaming in a tangled nest of roots, a woven weirwood throne that embraced his withered limbs as a mother does a child. His body was so skeletal and his clothes so rotted that at first Bran took him for another corpse, a dead man propped up so long the roots had grown over him, under him, and through him. What skin the corpse showed was white, save for a bloody blotch that crept up his neck onto his cheek. His white hair was fine and thin as root hair, and long enough to brush against the earthen floor. Roots coiled around his legs like wooden serpents. One burrowed through his breeches into the desiccated flesh of his thigh to emerge again at his shoulder. A spray of dark red leaves sprouted from his skull, and gray mushrooms spotted his brow. A little skin remained, stretched across his face, tight and hard as white leather, but even that was fraying, and here and there the brown and yellow bone beneath was poking through.
Yeah, no. What we got on the show was like an old guy in like a black cloak, I think, and he was like part of the tree, but not like
but in a charming way.
Yeah, in a oh, look at that old guy hanging out in that tree. This is oh my God, do you see that guy in that tree?
Is that tree eating him? What is happening? Yes. Yep. There's a real sense of like, does he want to be here? Like,
right?
Is this voluntary? What's going on?
Like, when this started to happen, why didn't he just move his leg and be like, nah, that tree's trying to grow on my leg. Let me switch it over real quick.
I would have just got out the way. Oh God, I'm sorry. I got a little Boondocks humor for you.
Like, I really need to rewatch. I keep saying I'm gonna do a rewatch, and I keep not doing it. I really need to do that. But no, but for real though, who sits there long enough to let a tree grow through your thigh?
It's a good question. Who indeed?
And a more important question is, you got the sight. How you not see that shit coming? What are you doing? Why are you just
maybe it's so fascinating in the sight that he lost track of the fact that he was being eaten until it was too late.
You know what? I bet that's exactly what happened. He spent
it's like
so
when you
much
get
time
really involved in a show and
Yep.
then you look down and you're just
Yep.
like, oh, I just like butt dialed 6 people, you know, because you were so distracted.
I think that's exactly what happened. Is he got so busy watching everything that he could see across time and space that then he looked down and he was a tree. I mean, that's how that shit happens. Ask anybody.
Oh, ask anybody. You should have heard what happened to my cousin. So yeah, Bran says, "Are you the 3-eyed crow?" And he says, "A crow? Once I, black of garb and black of blood. I have been many things, Bran. Now I am as you see me, and now you will understand why I could not come to you except in dreams." There's something about that cracks me up so bad. He's just like, "Yo, sorry about it. I hope you get it now."
Listen, but like, really, don't think about how crazy that is, because it seemed at the beginning of these books, we're like, you're going to ask a little boy who has lost the use of his legs to make this incredible journey, right? Like, are you completely mad? Have you lost your mind? What could be a good enough reason to force this little boy to make this trip? But then you meet this motherfucker and you're like, oh, well, there you go.
You're excused. I have watched you for a long time, watched you with 1,000 eyes and one. I saw your birth and that of your Lord Father before you. I saw your first step, heard your first word, was part of your first dream. I was watching when you fell. And now you are come to me at last, Brandon Stark, though the hour is late. And Bran immediately is like, yeah, I'm here. Would you go ahead and fix my legs?
Yeah.
And he's like, can't.
Yeah. I don't know if I fully appreciated or really got that this is what Bran thought this was going to be.
Yeah.
That he was harboring this desire for the impossible, that he really thought that the reward, for lack of a better word, of making it was going to be getting the use of his legs back. Like, I don't know if I just completely missed it or if it was just done in such a way that we weren't supposed to know it, so that this would be as impactful as it turned out being, because this is a heartbreaking moment.
Yeah.
To find out that Bran was thinking, really, this is what was going to happen. Because obviously I know that that's not what's going to happen, because I saw the show. I know that's not in the cards. And I don't remember Bran asking this on the show. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. No memory. But this was just like when he has to say no, and Bran's eyes filled with tears. But we came such a long way, is what I don't think he says that. He just thinks it to himself. But yeah, and then he says back to Bran, "You will never walk again, but you will fly." And you know what? I was not satisfied with that answer.
Right?
It felt like no. And no. Even though I knew that that's what this was, in this moment, I was like, that is insufficient, sir.
Yeah, I totally agree. It feels very much like, okay, well, McDonald's is closed, but I can make you like a filet mignon. And you're like, that's great and everything. I don't want a filet mignon. I
Right.
want a fucking Big Mac, please.
right.
That's what I
I-
was asking for.
I have been asking and traveling all this way for this very specific thing. And then
Yep.
I get here and you're like, no, I got a much better thing for you. But no, it's not what I
Mhm.
wanted. It's not what I've been
Mhm.
thinking about for 100 miles, you know. Ugh. Also, Bran
And
can
that's the
already
end of the
fly.
chapter. Oh, you mean like in terms of warging and stuff?
Yeah, even though I know that he's about to learn a whole bunch of other shit. Like, you know, I remember from the show the whole being able to sort of travel through time a little bit.
Mhm.
So I know he's about to get much better than McDonald's. But just in this one little tiny moment, I really felt like, man, if you don't let that boy walk again, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I know he's about to learn some magics that are going to be, you know, I'm hoping pretty spectacular. I don't know exactly how into it the book's going to go. I know the show didn't really. We spent so much time watching Bran travel, but the payoff was so rushed.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
that
Yep.
I just didn't get a good idea of what I was supposed to be feeling and what the story was trying to tell me. It just like was cobbled together, kind of haphazardly. You know, the whole thing just didn't land for me. So I'm really, really hopeful that I have a better experience with the book, but I'm trying to temper that with the understanding that this story is incomplete and that there might be table setting happening in this book for a feast that I never get to dine on. And trying to like reconcile that. It's still touch and go.
I don't know why that
I just-
phrasing that's very triggering for me as somebody who loves food so much, comparing it to like, oh, I'm watching this meal get set up and then I never get to eat it. Ouch, that hurt. Oh,
That's how it
right in the
feels,
feels, as they say, as they used to say back in my day.
Yeah, I don't know what they say
Millennial
now.
days. Yeah, I don't. Do they have things? What's
I don't know.
what's
Do
the
they
new
have
slang? Everybody.
Were you about to say, do they have feelings? It sounded like you were going to say, do they even have
That's not what I was going to say, but that's a good question. They come at us with such viciousness, it feels sometimes.
They really do.
Cold-blooded. I'm sorry, that was really funny. But no, what I had been going to say was like, do they have a phrase for that? You know, something similar, like right in the feels. Maybe it's you ate. Is that,
I think that is a different thing, ma'am.
His foot is on my neck. Is that
Also a different
kinda,
thing?
Yeah, I'm trying so hard. Oh,
Is
God.
it Riz? Is it Riz?
Oh,
That people keep talking about they won't be quiet about. I'm so tired of hearing about it.
Guys, I don't know how old everybody is listening, but if you are in your 20s, let me just tell you, it'll happen to you someday. Your days will grow shorter, the years will pass you by, and someday somebody's going to say something to you in total sincerity, and you're just going to give them a dead-eyed stare because it doesn't mean anything. And then you will know it's over. You are officially out of the zeitgeist and are no longer the target market of any advertiser except for Centrum Silver. Oh God. All right. So let's go ahead and hey, new patrons. We only have 2 this week. Delighted to have you. We have E. Dunham and Tyler Gallagher. Woo! Welcome to both of you. Appreciate your support so much. I just really hope that everybody who becomes a patron takes advantage of all the content and whatnot. I'm super excited about seeing some new faces And I hope that if you are somebody who looks forward to our show every week and is really like, oh, there's not an episode this week, that you come in and support us a little bit, because we apparently are important to you. We're important parts of your lives. We're part of your family now. And what is family good for except asking for money? So I'll just keep that tradition alive. I know that is I know that that's a terribly cynical viewpoint, and it's funny because I am not even somebody who has really experienced that, thankfully. But that's just because everybody knows, oh no, Natasha's going to be the one asking us. That's not going to be. There's nothing going down that road. You're not getting anything out of it. But yeah, I really, really appreciate the support, everybody, and the engagement on the Discords has been really great. Appreciating, like I was mentioning earlier, people like reminding me of the way that Brendan responded to certain scenes, and it's just really funny. I forgot about some of the ways that he got really upset about how things didn't quite go. Either they didn't go as he was expecting, or the problem is that they did go as he was expecting, or the one that I was reminded of in the most recent discussion. I'm so sorry. I don't remember who it was in the chat, but they mentioned that the Daenerys chapter where she's like trying to decide what to do regarding the fighting pits, regarding her dragons and everything, he was really, really upset because there was no good option. And was just I'm gonna go and find it, because she I think it's a she, but I may be wrong about that, so I'll just go with they wrote out like a whole script of the way it went. Yeah. And it was here it is. I'm sorry. It's just so funny because like, I really want to know this stuff. And I wrote in a comment, like, it's funny because it's sad. And that was my feeling on it, because it really felt like it summed up our marriage. Natasha was just sort of bemused by it all. To paraphrase, this is Koki. To paraphrase one of the more entertaining exchanges, Brendan, the dragons are being treated like it's an old-fashioned circus and they're beating them with sticks. Natasha, they're not beating them with sticks. What are you talking about? Brendan, I said it's like that. Natasha, but it's not like that. They're not being beaten. Brendan, I still don't like it. And then later on, your conflict was basically, Brendan, this chapter sucked to read. I hated all the moral quandaries. You, really? I thought they were all well written and interesting to think about what I would do in her position. Brendan, I don't care about that. I care that they all made me sad and frustrated. And I just wrote back, our marriage in a nutshell. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no. I know that sounded like I was saying, don't tell me about that. But no, it really is delightful to me to get to be reminded of the way things went, because I'm really, really curious about it. Every time I'm like, I wish I could remember the way that he responded to this. And I just will never be going back to read this. So I will never know, you know?
Yeah.
But
it's nice
anyway,
listeners to do the heavy lifting for you. So
and it's also wild to me to know that people are going back and listening to those, because those were the first episodes, and some of that is really not sounding good. Like, I mean that in the most literal sense, although also probably tonally we were way off on some things as well. But I know that our sound quality, especially at the start, with the two of us just leaning over,
I mean,
like a microphone we were sharing in the dining room of our apartment or our house. Oh boy, really rough.
It was the early days. You guys were just starting out. You know, what can you do? You were doing the best you could with what you had at the time.
Oh man, I really stop and think sometimes about the fateful day that I was like, oh, why don't we do this as a podcast? And what a fun little, just, you know, oh, this will be a lark. And now it's my whole life. life is crazy. It really, little turns that you don't think are much turn out to be everything. And it's impossible to predict.
The same. You can't. That's why fucking hindsight. What did they say? Hindsight is 2020. If you had any idea what, like, I'm not even going to go down that road because it'll just be there forever. But yeah, like there's nothing about what my day-to-day life looks like that I would have imagined in any capacity whatsoever, from who I'm with to where I live to what I do to podcasting to all of it. All of it is just like, how did any of this happen?
And me almost not applying for the job where I met you.
The whole thing.
And now this like so many things had to go exactly a certain way for us to end up where we are. And it could so easily have not happened.
That we even had a friendship that extended outside of work. Like, and literally, I have
Rashawn does not do that, guys.
I don't.
Like, it's not.
I don't. Like last night, I went out and did something socially with someone at work. And it is the first time I have done that since you left. And you were the only person I've ever done that with. Any other after work activity, go after work to have drinks, is only done when it's an occasion. Like if it's someone's last day and we do like happy hour to say like goodbye. That's it. I have never just been like, hey, we don't have to work. Want to go get a beer? I haven't done that with you. Were the only person I ever did that with, and haven't done it again. And since you left in like 2014, 13.
Yep, it was 2014.
Yeah, it's been almost 10 years, and I just did it again for the first time last night. I do not do that. Like, you know, I'm not that person that like takes the work relationship and brings it off of work time. And here we are.
Do you know that Monday, by the way, speaking of like things in the past, is my 2-year wedding anniversary?
I was thinking about you because they started coming up in my memories. Our trip started popping up. Yeah. Yeah. 2 I think years. I flew down. I got into, when did we get in Orlando? Like the 29th or something of November. And then
something like that.
You got married on
the 4th.
The 4th. That's right. Because I came home on Steve's birthday. Because Steve's birthday is the 5th. So yeah. Congratulations.
It was crazy. Thanks. Last year, Owen and I straight up forgot our anniversary because of the puppies and just the, madness with that. So this year I was like, hey babe, don't forget our wedding anniversary is coming up. And he was like, oh yeah, what do you want to do? And we were thinking we're just going to go to Red Lobster because
get some cheddar biscuits.
I really miss like the seafood that I could get in the Northeast. It's not, and Red Lobster's as close as I get down here.
Say, prepare to be a little disappointed.
It's like, it's disappointing in that it's not as good, but it's not disappointing in that it's way better than anywhere else that I have attempted around here. And I also am prepared. Like, there's a part of me that it's been so long that I actually don't know that I would remember what.
Yeah, that's true. This shit might be
like,
This shit might be getting ready to be delicious.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, that's true. It's been a long time, and you don't really have better options available. So yeah, you might get there and be like, this is a fucking feast. I will it to be. This is what I want. I'm putting it into the universe for you. There you go.
I'm going to get those crab legs, and any romance is going to be immediately ruined by my slobbering and slurping the meat out of these little fucking tubes.
Well, make it sexy. Just make it sexy.
Yeah, you like how I suck that tube, baby?
There you go.
Oh my God, I'm just thinking now, trying to do a blowjob and being like, I have some warm butter, some clarified butter.
All right, on that note, let's wrap this up.
We love you guys so much. Appreciate you all. Until next time. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Baron John, I will not
fucking...
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.